Do you know what a trademark is? Well, if not, today we're going to teach you. Hey everybody, I'm Velocity Pete, and today I've got Tiffany on with me to talk about the importance of trademarks and how you as an Amazon seller, if your product is trademarkable and you have a business that needs a trademark, how important it is to make sure that you do have one of those to protect your integrity amongst many other things on Amazon. Tiffany, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about this seemingly maybe overlooked aspect of selling on Amazon. And really just going into what it means to have a trademark on your business.
Yeah, so thanks for having me, Velocity Pete. I really appreciate it. Overlooked is an understatement. So we're going to teach you today, if you don't know about it, that you likely do have trademarks and what you can do about it. So it'll be exciting.
Amen. Like I said, I'm always excited to learn about something that, like you said, is maybe overlooked or that I don't really know too much about. So even just if we get one viewer and it's me, that's a win in my book. But it's great to have you on again to talk about something that I think a lot of Amazon sellers don't know about. So I think first things first, let's go over what is a trademark. And obviously for more established businesses, they already have their names trademarked. But if you're an up and coming, maybe mom and pop shop that wants to start selling their product on Amazon, they might not know what it is. So what is exactly a trademark for an Amazon business?
Okay, yes, that's the best place to start. So a trademark is actually a source identifier. So I often get the question, like, what's the difference between a copyright and a trademark? A trademark has to do with doing business. So if you think about Starbucks or you think about McDonald's, if an image comes to mind or word comes to mind, that's a trademark. So when you see that trademark, you're assuming who made the product or service, and that's where it comes from. So it has to do with people who are doing business and identifying the source of who produced it. So one really good example is the Nike swoosh. When you see that swoosh on a sneaker, you're assuming Nike made the sneaker. So what does that mean? There's a certain quality that comes with Nike. There's certain maybe return policy. And so you're assuming when that brand identifier is used, you're assuming who made the product. So that's exactly what a trademark is. So a trademark can be multiple things. It can be a logo. It can be the actual business name. It can be the actual product name, depending on the product. And it can also be a slogan. Now, there is a scent trademark, but it's very hard to get that. You have to have you have to have a really commercially identifiable scent.
Oh my gosh.
There are some companies out there with the scent trademark, and the color trademark is also very rare. But one example of the color trademark is the Tiffany blue of that Tiffany jewelry box. Mm-hmm. That specific color combination is trademarked. And also old one is the pink that went with the old Pink Panther installation.
Wow.
But it's actually,
color.
I wouldn't try to get a color trademark. It's very hard to get that, but the name mark and the logo mark are actually very easy, and that's what most of the listeners are probably going to want to go for.
Before I go any further, I have to ask, do you have any examples of a scent trademark? I'm thinking, obviously it has something to do with food. I don't know, even Nike, maybe a new shoe smell.
I have to get back to you because I honestly can't think of a good example, but I can let you know.
I'm so curious to know that. I didn't know this was this extensive. I thought it was as simple as just my brand name is trademarked. You get the little TM sign next to it, your official kind of thing.
Oh, can we talk about that real quick?
Yeah, let's go right into it. I know there's going to be a lot of different avenues we're going to go down, and I'll do my best, viewers, to keep us on a steady path. But this is a lot deeper than I think any of us that don't know about it realize. So, by all means, if we have something that we can go into that's interesting,
you brought up the TM. So, teaching trademark is sort of like whack-a-mole, in that you have to whack down people's kind of like misconceived notions of trademark. So, an interesting fun fact for trademark is the TM is actually a common law thing, which means that you generally claim rights to your trademark. It doesn't have anything to do with the federal registrations, which we're going to talk about today. But if you have federally registered your trademark, you get to use the R in a circle, which the R in a circle means registered. So that's a fun fact for you right there.
Very interesting. Okay, I feel like I definitely have seen that around. I remember I think the R in the circle is also the old Radio Shack logo for all of my people out there that remember Radio Shack. I know no one under the age of 20 probably would remember that. And I'm sure Jake, our producer in the background, is probably shaking his head thinking, how does Pete know about Radio Shack? They all think I'm too young for this stuff. But very, very interesting that there's just all these, like you said, preconceived notions. I'm sure you'll be hitting me with the whack-a-mole mallet a couple more times here, because I'm going to say like, something that is normally, I guess, would assumed, but is incorrect. So we'll have to have someone keep track of how many times I get something, a preconceived notion about trademarks wrong. I'm already up to one. So, okay, very interesting. So you said you can get a product or your brand name or really the company name trademark. What is the process for going about getting just the name or the logo trademarked for use?
Okay, so when I'm talking about the process, I like to be really specific, so I want to clarify. I'm talking about the process to file a federal trademark in the United States. So if you're outside of the United States or you're doing multiple countries, the different countries have their own trademark registry. Likewise, the states in the U.S. also have their own trademark registries. So historically, people might just file in their state. They owned a steakhouse in Florida. They were good. They didn't need a national trademark. Well, these days, if you've got a website, if you're selling interstate, then you need a federal trademark. And so when almost nobody does the state trademarks anymore, to the point where we don't even discuss them, what you want to get is you want to get your trademark as a federal trademark, use it nationwide, and protect it nationwide. So just want to clarify that that's the process we're talking about. The way that the federal law works is sort of two-pronged. So in order to get a federal trademark, you need to file with the United States Patent and Trademark Office. But the filing is the easy part. Not every mark or business name or product name that you use is going to qualify to be trademarked. So what does that mean? You file an application for the trademark. It takes up to a year, potentially over a year, for the trademark office just to get your application. And there's no skipping the line either. And then you find out whether the trademark office thinks that your trademark can be protected. And if they don't, they send you what's called an office action. And there's some office actions are more friendlier than others. Some will say you need to change this or that, and others will say, forget it. And now you've waited a year. So before you get to the registration process where you're applying for a trademark, I highly encourage people to get trademark research. So you might then ask, what's trademark research, right? So trademark research is a process where we review your potential trademark against what's already out there. And based on the results, you can decide whether you think the trademark office would let your trademark through. So the trademark office will only allow one person to have a trademark based on the channel of trade that they're using that trademark for. So for instance, if you are a pizza shop and you have a certain name, let's say Papa John's, if anybody else in the U.S. starts a pizza shop and calls it Papa John's, they can get a cease and desist letter from the registered trademark holder. And that means they have to stop using that mark right away. If they say, forget you, I'm just going to keep using my name, I don't care. You can get sued in federal court for up to 3 times the profits that you are making trading on someone else's registered trademark. It's a big deal.
Oh, wow.
And you have to pay their attorney's fees.
Oh, wow.
You don't ever want to be in that situation. There is no winning. So the general idea is, before you accidentally use someone else's trademark, you want to get that name, that product name, that business name researched, whether or not you want to protect it, just to see whether or not it's already protected by somebody else. So let me tell you the problem that I see when people don't get research. Somebody will start a business, I always say this, under their grandma's maiden name. Oh, been waiting for years to use this business name, and they're so excited. They open their website, they open their social media, they're going to town, they're selling jewelry on Etsy or whatever. Well, nobody's going to notice this, right? You're a small seller.
Small.
No one's
small
really
scale.
seen your brand, so you don't get a cease and desist letter. Well, then 5 years later, you bring a partner and you put big money behind your name, you invest in your website, you invest in your branding, and that's when you get your cease and desist letter. Why? The person who actually owns that trademark finally noticed you.
Yeah, you're getting
It's
big
not
enough.
that you really should have been using it, but now you've finally gotten in trouble for it.
Yeah.
So rewind that whole situation. If you start with trademark research, I tell people this all the time. I make people cry. It's a cry now versus cry later scenario.
And pay
I say this
lots
like
in
every day
legal fees.
because it's
so,
really true.
Yeah.
I'll make you cry when you find out you can't use that name you've been dying to use for 20 years because someone has it registered in your same class, and it's not a good business decision. One day, far, far away in the future, you could get this whole brand ripped away from you. So that's the cry now. But we avoid the cry later, which is still crying with a whole lot more of a loss associated with it.
Of a lot more legal fees, it sounds like, in there. Yeah.
Yeah, less legal fees, but really it's the rebranding. Paying for a new website, paying for a new rebuild, doing a new logo, switching out your products.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. I didn't even think about all, like, if that's on the package of your product. Like, you think about it on Amazon, man, like all that stuff in the FBA warehouse, you got to pull that immediately.
Mm-hmm.
God forbid
Imagine
this happens.
the loss of that product that you've already built out.
Yeah.
And so for some people, it sounds like pie in the sky. Oh, that would never happen to me. But there are a lot of people out there who have the cease and desist letter history. And once you talk to somebody who's received one and they tell you their horror story nightmare about their losses, honestly, those people would never do it again. They would start with trademark research, and it's called clearing your mark. It's an actual process that major companies go through, all the time. You wouldn't start a product that you're going to sell internationally under just whatever name sounds great. That's not how big business does it. It's all founded on trademark law. Why? Because they're not going to lose their investment. They know better. And so really we're kind of on a mission to educate the smaller business owners and bring them up to the level of doing business the way the bigger businesses do it, which is starting with the research, finding something not only that you can actually use and not get a cease and desist letter, but that you could potentially protect yourself, and then investing in that. And sometimes it does mean rebranding. But that's okay if you're rebranding intentionally. Rebranding can be an excellent opportunity. So if you get past the cry now scenario and you have to rebrand because you really do want to invest in your brand and you want something strong you can protect, it's an excellent opportunity to touch base with all your customers again. Hey, remember me from 5 years ago? I just rebranded.
Yeah, fun new rebrands.
Yeah.
Put a nice spin on it. Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be as devastating. I think that some people, they don't even want to know. They don't even want the information because then they have to act on it. But honestly, it doesn't have to be that dramatic. You can work to rebrand over time, over a couple of years, and you can work a rebrand into a business model. So really we're providing education. So that's the first step. When you talk about trademark, to me, the first step is identifying a trademark you can protect. So I'll tell you a couple more reasons why a trademark might get denied. So it could be that you're using a brand name that is descriptive of your product or services. And this is nuanced. So for instance, if you have the name of a city or state in your brand. So let's say I'm, New York apple seller and I sell apples. I can't get that trademark. So I have two problems. Number one, I'm using the location where I'm actually at. So no one's allowed to lock up the descriptive term of the location. So then separately, the concept of genericness is if I'm selling apples, I cannot register the word apples for selling an actual apple that you eat because that's what's considered generic for the term. It's literally what you're selling. So there's two concepts. There's descriptiveness and genericness. Neither of those will make it through for the trademark, but the trickier one is descriptiveness. So if your brand name sort of just describes the quality of your product or service, you might say, well, Tiffany, will I make it? Sometimes it's even hard to know because trademark examiners are just people. So where one examiner might be like, yeah, that's different, or it's not descriptive, another person might think it is. So not every brand name or product that you're already using could actually get trademarked. Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't use it. You can do business under a brand name that is not trademarked. So what's the problem? So if I'm New York Apples and I put a lot of money behind that idea, I'm making big money. People like it. A competitor can set up right next door to me. New York Apples over here. What can I do about it? Nothing. Why? I didn't use a brand name that I have any exclusivity to. And that's the point. That's the conversation that I have with a lot of business owners who are like, it doesn't matter anyway. It does matter. It matters later, and it could be very expensive later, and you could regret it later. So I would say rethink that generic or descriptive idea up front and come up with something that's a little more what we call fanciful. So really good trademark, and the kind of trademarks that you see big business using are what we call fanciful marks. So a fanciful mark does not describe the product. It doesn't include the name of the product you're selling. It could be a made-up word. Those are really good trademarks. But it generally evokes a sense of the product or a way the product makes you feel. Maybe it makes you feel safe, or the product makes you feel hungry, or whatever it is the product does. And it'll be a term that's sort of associated with that level of the product, where if you heard the term, you wouldn't even have any idea what it was. That's a good trademark. Unfortunately, this goes directly against SEO.
Yeah.
So SEO says
no
type exactly what the customer's going to look for.
Yeah.
Apples in New York, right? So trademark fights SEO.
Yeah. It's very interesting to think about some things that people have trademarked, and I think about some names that do have like Pennsylvania something, or like Philly, something, that's the business name. But I would think if I dug a little bit and asked them maybe like, oh, what's your trademark? You wouldn't be Philadelphia cheesesteaks. It wouldn't even be cheesesteaks. It would be something completely different. It's very interesting, very, very interesting. And it's funny you bring up the made up words as a good trademark. So we play, I don't know if you play Wordle a lot, but my family and I are big into Wordle, and my dad will guess random words that aren't in the dictionary, but he writes them down because he says that exact thing. He said, oh, this would be a great business name. So it's funny that you bring that up because that's exactly what he does. So for $1 a piece, I will send you a made-up word that my dad has came up with for your new business. So feel free to hit me up. I take Venmo or cash. I don't know if you live in the area. But very interesting that it would be, again, it competes with SEO. You're right, because no one's Googling these made-up words. So this isn't really just for newbies. I mean, it mostly pertains to people that are just getting started and maybe, like I said, need to do the research. But I'm sure there are plenty of bigger businesses out there that make this mistake and that don't have everything marked correctly or even at all. I don't know if you have any examples of that from your time, but I would imagine this isn't just for people of the newer side of things.
Oh no, yeah, this is for everyone. So I'll give you an example. We've had clients come to us that have been in business over 25 years, and they've got like 13 different trademarks, an entire portfolio that they never protected. And a lot of times people finally come over when they're ready to sell their business. And it's so interesting. They didn't find it themselves, they didn't find themselves worthy of the trademark and in the investment, but they know the value of the trademark when they go to sell the business. So they're like, okay, I'm thinking about selling my business. Now I want to protect my portfolio. It's also generally expected of your business. If you're going to go sell it to someone else, that number one, you're operating under a trademark. You can actually use the person that purchases it isn't going to get a cease and desist letter. So that's one great reason for trademark research before you sell. But also they're expecting to pay, and it's called goodwill, for the trademark itself, because part of what they're purchasing, part of what you've built over a long time, is the value of the name that you've been doing business under. So we can, so long as it survives the research and it's available and it's something you can protect, then we can help you file to get that name protected. It takes over a year to get the registration completed from the application. So let's say you're thinking about selling your business in the next couple of years. Now's the time to get the trademark, because I tell people, do you want to be that person who's selling their business, and when you get the trademark inquiry, you're saying, well, actually, I just filed for it last week. Like, what?
Ooh,
That doesn't
that
look
might
right.
yeah, might bring
And the
your
older your
value
business
down.
is, the worse look that is for you.
Yeah.
You want your business's trademark to grow in value and esteem with the business, so that when somebody is going to go buy it and they look back at it, it matches that history. Oh yeah, this business started in 1921 and they filed their trademark in 1922. Oh, that makes sense, So I have another example about the way that the pharmaceutical industry uses the trademark rules. I basically ruin every pharmaceutical commercial for you for the rest of your life. This is why. Pharmaceutical companies have to find a trademark they can use worldwide, all over the world. That's very hard. So what do? They make up a word, number one, fanciful, right? Top of the trademark spectrum. They don't just make up a word. They generally pick a word that has one of the least common words in the alphabet, or combination of letters in the alphabet. I'm talking X, Y, I, double L, ZL. And you start seeing commercials, every pharmaceutical commercial you watch, it's going to evoke the feeling of the drug. It's not going to say the drug's name or any of the descriptive terms the drug does. It's going to be one word. You're going to have never heard of that word before. And generally, it's going to have one of these letters in it. And that becomes a drinking game.
Wow. A drinking game.
And you would say, why?
Yeah.
Why? They just applied all the trademark principles to the highest point possible. They're trying to find something they can file in the U.S. and China and South America. It's very difficult because, just any common terms, availability is going to be limited. Well, what does that mean? Now I've got to be a different brand in China than I am in the U.S. because I can't do business in China under this mark, or vice versa. They don't want to deal with any of that. They want one mark, works worldwide, and that's how they get it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is going to be a drinking game now.
Yeah.
And
And
I'm
it
thinking
also
just all
ruins
the
it,
ones
but
I've
it's kind of
seen.
fun.
Yeah, I think about all the ones I've seen recently of just, oh man, like, yeah, that's not a
Fits the
word.
bill. Yeah. On occasion, some don't have the letters, but for the most part, fits the bill. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm going to have to keep an eye out next time I'm watching TV or something, and the commercial comes on for some random new drug. Very interesting. Very interesting. It seems like, again, and I know I said this right in the beginning, there's a lot of different branches of the trademark tree that kind of go off in multiple different directions. And there's just so much about them that you maybe don't know, let alone just the basics, that there's all these different layers of things. Like, I think when we were talking last about sort of getting the name registered in a state and not federally, I know for Amazon, you have to get it federally. You have to be able to sell in all U.S. states if you want to sell in the U.S. market, which seems pretty basic. But can you real quick run us through what's the difference and what's the more complications of getting a state trademark versus a federal one?
Okay, so a state trademark, one thing that makes a state trademark generally easier, and I have helped people get state trademarks for specific situations, is there's only so many marks filed in that state. When you're going against the federal registry, think of you're going against a nationwide number of prior users. You're like, oh, it doesn't matter what you do. Oh, I sell coffee. You know how many people have sold coffee before you? And they all had the same thoughts. They thought about the color, the taste, the smell, the feeling. And so all these great ideas you think are so unique, you make a list of them and you check them against the trademark registry. You might not even get one that's available because so many people have come before you. And that's what I think is sort of underscores doing business and finding your business name, finding your product name for trademark, is that it isn't easy. People who've gotten their cease and desist letters, or people who've had just a trademark rejected, they understand that it isn't easy. There's a high rejection rate. And the more easy and quick you thought of it, the less likely it is available because somebody thought of it real fast 40 years ago and they've had it that long. I once tried to help somebody who was looking for anything related to a beer, like color, taste, look. Anheuser-Busch and Budweiser and all those people have been selling beer for so long. So many words you can think of are fully what I call locked up. Just you can't use it because you might be infringing them. And it's not just the basics. It's like those ideas you have that start mushrooming out. And it just shows you how we think we're so unique, but our minds work so similarly that we go down this path of thought, check the mark, and you can't believe someone filed it 2 years ago. That means they had that exact thought process you had. It's very fascinating, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I if you have any examples, like if the beer, so if I was starting a beer company, first of all, it would be cider. I'm not really much of a beer guy.
Oh, there you go. That makes it better, actually. Less cider, less people selling cider, so you've already got a better idea.
Sweet. But what would I be infringing upon if I guess I can't do, like, obviously I can't do orchard ciders because then you got Angry Orchard, right? Like that would be locked up.
That's a good example. Right.
Yeah. Even if I was doing like Happy Orchard, they would say, no, absolutely not. That's too close to ours. So it's relative based on, I'm guessing, the different industries that you're in.
It's an interesting example you picked because it's nuanced. So for instance, if the word orchard was seen as descriptive of a cider product because the apples in any cider product come from an orchard, if an examiner found that descriptive, then Angry Orchard wouldn't be able to keep Happy Orchard off of the mark. They would both be able to exist.
Oh, wow.
But if the trademark examiner's like, orchard, nah, you don't really need orchard to talk about cider, it's not descriptive, it's okay, then Angry Orchard could keep you off of orchard. So talk about nuance. It was a really good example because that shows you it can be a very gray area. And in the research, what's really great, let me tell you one more thing that's really great about trademark research, is we can see the history of people who filed before you. So if I'm Unhappy Orchard and you're Happy Orchard and there's Angry Orchard and I filed Unhappy Orchard last year because it takes a year for them to get to it, right? In the research, I can look at somebody who filed something really similar and say, oh, did Unhappy Orchard get through or did they get rejected as too close? So you can actually look at what's happening to other people. And I often use that to help tell people like, look, forget it because this other person didn't get theirs. And it shuts the door because people are just like, well, maybe it'll go through. And I'm like, no, so-and-so's did not go through a year after them. So you can just give up on that idea, right? So there are some ways, and you wouldn't know that unless you knew how to research and utilize, the trademark office information. And it's there for everyone. Actually, it's free to the public. The point is you probably don't know where to look or how to figure those out, or let alone as quickly as we can help you do that. But it just kind of spotlights how tricky it is to just look on the USPTO yourself, see whether or not something's registered. And often checking the mark yourself does what I call gives you enough to be dangerous, which means dangerous to yourself. So if you have a mark that's descriptive, like I used the example of apple for actual apple, You're like, oh, I'm going to sell apples. I'm checking my mark online. Hey, nobody has it. Nobody is using Apple for actual apples. It's available. It's available because no one can have it. So you're going to file, you're going to wait a year, and you're going to get rejected, and you're going to find out that's why it looks available. So I've had clients come to me like that. Oh, I checked it. It's available. I'm like, yeah, it's available because no one can have it, right? So that's knowing enough to get it, convince yourself you're right when you're completely wrong. So, yeah, just another pitch for working with a professional.
Yeah, and there you go. I mean, you guys have built this business on there. I would hope you have more of an idea. You guys definitely do have more of an idea of just someone Googling this.
Right.
But it's very interesting to think about that, and you think about the time frame too, like this whole year-long process of
waiting.
You might not even know. You might be doing research and saying, this is maybe another nuanced scenario for you, but if I were to file, and I'll stick with Happy Orchard because I do like Angry Orchard cider. It's a little sweet, but I like them.
Yeah.
If I were to file Happy Orchard on September of 2020, right, and I put it in, right, it takes a year. What if somebody filed it in August of the same year and I didn't see it because it didn't go through all the way yet? Is that something that comes up, or is that really not specific? Is that really very?
That's extreme. That's very realistic. So. All right, talk about nuance. All right, we're going to take you a whole nother level. I didn't take you guys to the second level of trademark, which is first use. So I say unfortunately because it creates another level of confusion. But in the U.S., the person who uses a trademark first has a lot of rights. They're called common law rights, but I call it like first use rights. So this is how nuanced trademark law is. You can file, let's say you filed Happy Orchard, waited your year, trademark office didn't have any problems, you have your trademark registration, right?
Is it?
But I used Happy Orchard first, and I used it 4 years ago, 2 years before you, or whatever, I lost the math. During your first 5 years of registration, I can contest your mark, and I can do what's called a first use fight. And if I took you to court or through the USPTO to say I used that first, even though you registered it first, I would win. And I would win because of the power of first use. So the way the trademarks work, and I just had a whole conversation with my assistant about this today. After the 5th year is over from your trademark, your first time you filed your trademark, you have to file to prove you're still using your trademark. That's another thing people don't always know. Just because you have a trademark, if it's over 5 years old, you might have lost it. So just knowing you have to keep up with your trademarks gonna ring bells for some people. You have the option to file what's called Section 15 filing, and it creates an incontestability of your mark. You basically affirm during the last 5 years, nobody's bothered me, nobody said they used it first. It's just been me. I'm affirming that to the trademark office. You pay a little extra money, and at that point, your mark is pretty much incontestable. It's not 100%, nothing could ever happen, but it's the best thing you can do to protect your trademark. So, what's the difference during the first 5 years? Contestability. That's the problem. Who would contest you? The only people who could contest you are using it similar to how you're using it. Used it before you. Used it first. So even a trademark registration, you've got that R and the piece of paper. It's just not as conclusive as you want it to be. So part of trademark research is we don't just check who's registered it. We see who's using it. So we can tell you, hey, this happens regularly. No one's registered this. 14 other people have used it before you that we've found, and they're just the ones online. You can use it, you can file it, you can risk it. Many people often do because they don't want to think of something else. They've been using it for a while, they want it registered. But the point is that you go into that decision understanding the risk. So first you understand you could lose it because you probably didn't know that. And secondly, you could say, oh, it's only one other person. I don't look like they're going to, really do it. I'll take the risk. or it's 14 other people. This one guy looks like he's about to launch worldwide. I think I'll let it go to him. One day he'll figure it out. And those are all business decisions. So in the research, we just really provide you the pure research. And then you have to make that business risk decision. And everybody will analyze risk differently. There's a lot of passion involved. People don't always make the best decision because they're so passionate. But, some people take more risks than others. So that's a nuance to the trademark. So that was a long way to answer your question. It happens all the time. Somebody files a mark, somebody else filed it. They didn't research it, so they wouldn't know. Someone else filed that mark 6 months before them. Who's going to win? Initially, the first to file will win under the trademark office's review because they're next in line. They're the one. They just go in order, right? But that doesn't mean they'll end up with it because the real person who will win is the person that used it first. So if they're my client, somebody already filed for it, but my client used it first, you're going to get a letter from me. Please take your mark down. Stop trying to apply for your mark. Abandon it because my client has first use. We're filing that mark. And otherwise, we're going to contest you and win anyways. And as long as the other person has an attorney who knows what that message means, they'll look at their client and they'll say, you don't have first use. There's absolutely no point in fighting this because there's no way to win. And their client has to go find the new trademark. So
wow,
it's not just somebody filed it, I'm out of luck. It's that nuance, which I think once again means work with a professional that can advise you on your specific situation and then make your business decision based on the information that you get. But it's that nuance. So I don't think you expected all that answer.
No, I did not. I can tell you right now, I did not.
I'm blowing your mind.
Yeah, like I said, it's just really the tree runs many branches. I don't know if there's a phrase that means something like that, but there's a lot of trademark laws.
Mm-hmm.
To give a Shrek reference. Trademark laws are like onions. There's many layers. Many layers. It sounds like. It just blows my mind how specific you can get with this stuff. And I'm sure, like I said, you said it earlier, there's millions of people that have, I'm sure, trademarks in the Federal Reserve. I don't know if you know the exact number of trademarks out there right now, but I have no doubt it's a very, very high number. So it's interesting to think about, okay, are you infringing on anybody? Are you even coming close to infringing on somebody? And I know in terms of Amazon, again, I'm trying to make it relate to Amazon as much as possible. In terms of Amazon, if you have your brand registered, and actually before I even get into that, I want to ask about brand registry. So if you know that Amazon has kind of their own, what's it called? The trademark program that they have, the IP Accelerator.
Yeah.
I couldn't think of that for a second. And I know we've had some of our clients do it, and they all they do is trademark laws all day long for Amazon. But they don't have to wait a year to get your brand in the system. They give you like that 14-digit PTO code pretty quickly, quicker than a year, but it's not fully approved. You're just in the system. So what is going on there? And should some brands that do that maybe still be, I don't want to worry them, but should they maybe be aware that you're not really fully approved yet? You still have to wait until the PTO says you are. But Amazon's giving you that 14-digit code to get brand registered. What's happening there? And what are the problems
oh my
with
gosh,
that?
you just hit on my favorite topic. All right, so I'm gonna dispel some myths and rumors. All right, whack-a-mole. Yes. This is like a double
Yes,
whack.
there it is.
All
Please,
right.
yeah.
Whack-a-mole. So there's two things going on here. There's the brand registry and there's Amazon's IP Accelerator. Newsflash. The IP Accelerator no longer has any preference. They lost it. I'm assuming they got sued.
Oh, wow.
I haven't found the exact suit yet, or they got the threat level that made them change it. So this is directly from Amazon. If you go to the IP Accelerator, you'll notice it's a list of law firms. It's law firms that they want you to use. I'm guessing those law firms paid a pretty penny to be on that page, but they've been vetted by Amazon. You're free to use them. If you look at the disclaimer at the bottom, it says they don't have anything to do with the firm. They don't have anything to do with the filing. They're not associated. They don't recommend them, XYZ, right? Common disclaimer. So it used to be that if you use the Amazon IP Accelerator, which were preferred firms, you could get onto the brand registry quicker. So originally, to get on the brand registry, you needed a filed trademark all the way through to the end to get your R, right? A registered trademark. Then they said, but if you file with some of our Amazon IP Accelerator firms, all you need is an application. So the application is what you get day one. You can actually file a trademark application on a trademark you're not even using yet. That's called a pre-use application. So if you went with Amazon IP Accelerator, then those firms would prove the application, give the application number over, and they would let you get into the brand registry. Well, a lot of other firms had a problem with that. And I'm assuming there was a lawsuit, but let's just say that is not the case anymore. It's per their own site. If you click enough places, you'll find that it says in the U.S., to qualify for the brand registry, you have to have either a registered trademark or an application. And that applies across the board to all law firms.
Wow.
So I'm dispelling myths. I am not making this up. I got an email today from a prior client who was confused about whether they had to use the accelerator to get preference. And I was happy to tell them, no, they can use any law firm they want. They could use my firm or anybody else and still get onto the brand registry with the application number. And I believe it has to do with Amazon having to deal properly with everyone and not give preference. So there's no way they would have voluntarily did it. So let's just say that.
Wow. No, I'm shocked because...
So it's dispelling myths and whack-a-mole. Of course, Amazon's not going to advertise this. They want you to use their people. Why? They probably get money for the people on there, I'm assuming. I'm not sure, but I'm assuming you pay to play on there.
Interesting. And I know I don't want to completely dispel the IP Accelerator because, they have done, they do kind of get it moving, but it seems like there is that underlying issue of, okay, well, in a few months after, everything goes through, are you still going to have that name? And like we've said a couple times now, if you're established, if you've got it brand registered and you've got your name on all your packages and it's on your products and it's this, and now you have to stop using that. Oh my gosh. So it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe this isn't the way, maybe you should just use yours, something like your service. But if you did the brand, the trademark research beforehand and said, okay, this is good, and then went to IP Accelerator, would that be better? I mean, obviously, of course, it would be better than just doing IP Accelerator, but that seems like more of the safe route to take than just kind of jumping right in with 2 feet and kind of maybe just dipping a toe in first to see if in a year's time, like I said, you won't get shut down.
Yeah, so I agree with that. So just so that you understand, Amazon's IP Accelerator is just a list of law firms. That's all it is.
Yeah.
So if we just, instead of saying using the IP Accelerator, if we say using Amazon's law firm list, it starts to lose its cachet.
Mm-hmm.
These law firms don't have any magical powers. If they file your application and someone filed before you, it will get rejected just like the law firm next to it will. So it's not that you can't use the firms on the IP Accelerator. I would advise you to get quotes. Pick a couple off of there and get a couple quotes. Get quotes from firms that aren't on there and pick a firm that has a reasonable price, is going to be there to help you. And, when it comes to picking who you're going to work with as an attorney, you always get what you pay for. So if you're going super bottom dollar, a lot of times, and not always, but you might work out great for you. But a lot of times, the less you're paying, the less attention that your mark's getting. So if you're working with a firm on or off the IP Accelerator, that firm may include trademark research or they might not. So if you were getting a quote and they were like, this is the quote for the filing, you could say, well, are you going to do any research and let me know if I should bother filing it? You're going to let me file it, pay you, and let it get denied next year. So one firm might be like, no, we start with the research. Another firm might be like, oh, well, this is our filing quote. You want a quote for research? That's a different quote, right? So I have a trademark research company called Trademark Prospector, and we are purely research. So if you start with us, you can take your research to any firm. You could take it to a firm on the IP Accelerator or any other one. Or you could, use the research and say, okay, I'm not going to file this because it doesn't really look very good. I'm going to try to rebrand and then find one that I can file. And so I just encourage people, find a trademark company that seems reputable to you, that has fair pricing, which means get a couple quotes. And if you have to pick between, very similarly priced firms and one's closer to you, or one offers some services that you might think you'd use those services and create a relationship with the firm, or if they're just going to file your mark, you could consider that, to kind of which way you would break. Ultimately, for trademark filings, we all offer the same service. We're going to take the specific information requested, file it with the trademark office. So a lot of the big question is really not in the filing process. It's whether you should file, right? Many firms will file for you at your request. They're not guaranteeing it's going to get through. And you don't get the money back. So, and this is with the huge education piece. And also why you can actually file yourself through the trademark office. You can file with what are called scriveners, which are non-law firms that generally just ask you the same questions the trademark office asks you. And there's a range of ways to file. And sometimes it depends on your budget, your savviness. Like, I used to be a paralegal. I'm great at this stuff. Okay, do it yourself, But if that's not your thing, you may want to get advising. But I think it all comes back to the research, because the filing is generally straightforward. There's nuances to proving use and things we could get into. But the substance of it is, will that go through? Was that worthwhile to file? And so that's, I'm harping on it.
No, this like I said at the beginning, this isn't something that people are really aware of on every level.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that people that are watching this and then learning something are happy to have you harp on it.
Yeah.
And we'll be even more happy to know that Tiffany will be back for another episode. I have no doubt to cover maybe more of these nuances that these bigger businesses might have to deal with, or you as a small business might have to deal with when going through and trademarking everything. It's just, there's just so much, and I wish there was like a phrase or expression I could think of. There's so many apples in the barrel that you can't possibly sort through all of them. But it's very interesting to learn about all of these, like I said, different paths and different avenues that are related to getting trademarked.
And just sort of to wrap it up, I would say what I try to impress upon people is that there is a value to the trademarks. In the Amazon world, it's an even higher value because you get that Amazon brand registry protection. So the brand registry, once you're on it, they will work to keep other companies who might be trying to copy you or to confuse the system and steal your business. Once you've proven you're legitimate, they're working to protect you as opposed to maybe thinking you're the illegitimate company. I mean, that's the value right there, let alone the value in building that brand and having it be something you can sell later and having, the certificate that the person's going to expect to see when they want to buy that really valuable brand. So I think, people think about it often in the short term, the cost to rebrand if they can't have what they want, or just the cost of the filing, the cost of the maintenance. But ideally, as you put more and more money behind that brand, that should be the value you're looking to protect, right? The rest of the money that goes toward it should pale in comparison to what you're building and trying to protect. So I just encourage everyone to consider that as the value, and think about whether it'd be worthwhile for you to pursue trademark research, which is the first step before you even pursue the filing. Just the research, just to see where you stand.
Yeah.
Really, no matter how long you've been in business, just to see where you stand.
See what's out there, yeah, and see if you can even make it into the space that you're trying to get into, yeah, as far as the name goes. Yeah, well, that was a great final thought. I was actually going to ask you just that exact question of what's one thing you can leave Amazon sellers with today about going through and putting their trademark in. So read my mind.
Yeah.
You should get that trademarked. Very, very informative discussion, Tiffany. Thank you so much for being on today to talk to us about this very nuanced, overlooked, all the other adjectives we use to describe the trademark process. Really, I love learning something when I come on here to talk to people, and I can definitely check that box off today. So really, thank you so much for coming on and teaching us all something a little bit more about why you need to be trademarked and really the importance of it.
Yeah, well, I really appreciate you having me, and be happy to come back anytime.
Yeah, you guys, like I said, you'll see Tiffany again because I know there's a lot more to cover in the realm of trademarks. So that's it for this week, though. So thanks everybody for watching. I'm Velocity Pete, and we will see you next week.